Welcome back to the channel, everybody. We've got some guitar-based content for you today. I'm hoping that if you found this video, the reason that you're here is because you've discovered this guitar with a company that you've never heard of before, and you're trying to find out anything and everything you can because you're thinking about buying it. Tradition Guitars. Most of the videos you're going to find out there are going to be people giving you opinion pieces, reviews. There's a lovely gentleman with a German accent that's out there that's done some really flattering work, and I appreciate that kind of stuff. I mean, it's the only information that's out there, but I kind of want to do one better. I want to walk you through what Tradition was, who the people were that founded it, and what it was that they were going for when they made instruments like this one. This beautiful Strat was found in a pawn shop in northeastern Maryland, and I bought it for $60. That's right, $60. But it wasn't in anywhere near the shape that it's in right now. You know, every piece of hardware that was on here was rusted out. Of course, it needed new strings. I wasn't sure if the electronics worked, but in spite of all of that, when I looked at the wood, when I messed around with the switching, when I checked out the nut and the neck, it felt great. Even hefty, right? This is not a light guitar. This is pretty heavy for a Strat, coming in at, I would say ballpark 9 pounds. But there was something about the feel of it that really was remarkable. And keep in mind, at the time that I found this guitar, I was starting out. I have not been playing very long. I'm a novice player. My main reason for playing is that I have a teenage son. And when he was younger, it became obvious really quickly that if we didn't have something in common, we were going to have a really hard time during his teenage years. I did everything I could to try to keep up. But the thing that I got pretty good at, I guess, was finding inexpensive instruments and making them playable again. With the Tradition, it really wasn't that hard. So Tradition was founded by veterans of the music industry. These were reps that worked with all kinds of companies from Washburn to Seymour Duncan. Some of them held high-level positions. A lot of them had a sales background. They had relationships with factories and stuff like that, and they were witnessing in the mid-1990s the thing that's kind of become manifest for all of us now, which is the death of the mom and pop guitar store. But back then, there was still a chance that somebody could try to do something about it. So these dudes got together, they found a factory, they leveraged their connections, they put some money together, they converted effectively a barn out in Indiana to a warehouse, and they started producing these instruments. And their goal the entire time was to make a high quality instrument that could be sold at a reasonable price and exclusively marketed through these mom and pop stores. You would never see a Tradition in a Guitar Center. You would never see a Tradition in a Sam Ash. You would only see it at the shop right down your street. So in that way, Traditions were an attempt to stop the inevitable. And that's why they're not around anymore. The big money is too hard to fight. But the good news is that these guitars are still around. And for those who know what they are, they're intensely valuable. Unlike those other videos that you might have seen, I'm going to take you right to the horse's mouth. This is me documenting a conversation that I had with the current proprietor of Tradition Guitars, Rusty Bickford. Rusty's a fantastic dude. He was very kind to spend so much of his time talking to me so that I could get this video out on the street. I'll tell you what, I've owned maybe 9 Tradition guitars. 10? What? I just bought another one, as a matter of fact, so yeah, we're probably at 10 or 11. And I've always been amazed at how good they were, regardless of country of manufacture. You'll have some like this one that were made in the early 2000s out of the factory in Indonesia. The guitars that, in my opinion, absolutely steal the show, I'll grab it. Were the models like this one, manufactured from 2009 through 2012 out of World Music in Korea. This thing is an absolute beast. And if you ever get the chance to handle one, and you're doing a comparison of build quality, the Tradition guitars produced by World Music in Korea during that window, 2009 to 2012, they're every bit as good as the Gibsons that they were competing with. And if you think that I'm one of those guys that will just say something like that, here is my own personal Gibson SG. And this is a early 1950s Gibson L4C that's been in my family for 60 plus years. But the Gibson and Fender clones weren't the only instruments that they produced. They had a run of some really, really interesting one-offs, like this Tradition MTQ, one of my favorite guitars that I've ever had, especially in comparison to the SG. It's got more of a, I guess, a 60s Gibson neck. It's a little bit flatter, more of a deep profile, a little narrower up here, and that's not a thing that I'm super in love with. I'm more of a baseball bat kind of guy, but the access that you get to the upper frets, absolutely incredible. And the fact that you got this beautiful double cut with the simplicity of just a single volume, single tone, right? Great feel, great quality, great neck joint, absolute stability. Fantastic instruments. And if you're more of a Fender person, just in comparison, right? So like when I'm talking about my G12, I've got a late 80s Fender Strat Plus, made in the USA. Really, really, really cool guitar. Produces fantastic Strat sounds. 3 single coils, right? Somehow, for some reason, I still find myself gravitating towards the Tradition. I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I'm saying the Tradition guitars feel like home. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the conversation. This is Rusty Bickford, the current proprietor of what's left of Tradition guitars.
There's my guy.
Hey, buddy.
How you doing, Rusty?
Good. How are you?
Hanging in there, man. I see you're in the shop.
Yeah.
Right on. Right on. Rusty, were you like one of the original crew at Tradition, like in the very beginning?
Well, here's how, and like I say, Chris has his version because I didn't know Chris. I was partners with a guy named D. Tatum, who had been this international sales manager for Washburn for years.
Okay.
Decided to come get out of Chicago and come back to Fort Worth and start his own company. So we were doing that, and one day D walked in and said, "Man, we need to start our own guitar line." And I looked at him and I said, "Man, you're crazy. That's just what the world is, another no-name guitar line." He goes, "No, man, no, we need to do it. I've got a great end at a factory, And long story short, he wanted to call it Ranger.
Is that like a callback to the Texas roots?
Yeah. So we started started selling container loads of guitars in South America. He had great customers all over the world.
Wow.
So we were 40-foot containers in South America. That was in 98. And then there was a huge bank crash in South America. Everything went kaput. These guys came to us that D knew through repping, guys that they'd been reps for Seymour Duncan, Washburn, all kinds of stuff. It was Jim Matthews, Ed Ryder, and Wendell Hartman.
Okay.
And they said, "Man, we know you guys can get some good guitars and you're in with a good factory, and we want to start bringing in a guitar line, and we want to call it Tradition. We've already got the name for it." Jim lived on 40 acres in Greencastle, Indiana. He converted a horse barn into a guitar warehouse.
Oh, wow.
And man, we started bringing them in, and at our peak we were bringing in 6 or 7 40-foot containers a year from Korea and Indonesia and stuff. It was a big warehouse. We could have thousands of guitars in there. It was all going great, and then Jim got sick, leukemia, and died.
Sorry, man.
Wendell and Ed didn't really want to have anything to do with it anymore, and at that point it was really kind of pretty much a cheap guitar line. We lucked into a great factory. These guys right here.
Okay. And who's that?
Well, this is Mr. Lee, and he had a factory called Rira.
Okay.
Not Samsung. He used to be the manager at Samsung.
Oh, wow.
He left, started his own company. Okay. This was in 98.
Okay.
And Mr. Hanks. And this is Eric Matthews. That's Jim Matthews' son.
Okay.
Who ended up taking over for Jim. And it was Jim and Chris. It was Eric and Chris and me and Jim's wife, Shar, all running the company.
It started out in Indiana, then it moved to Texas.
Yep.
And then
it was in Indiana. Chris was in Tullahoma, Tennessee. He did sales. Wendell was also in Tennessee. Ed was in North Carolina. So we had a real base in the South. And like, you know, when all those guys were working, man, we were selling lots of guitars. It was just hard. You know, it was a new line. You had to convince people. It wasn't really, I mean, we didn't do anything too wild and special at the first. We just did some great guitars, good enough to where Jerry Reed went in and bought one at a music store and flipped out over it and called us and said, man, I want to know more about you guys. And that's how we ended up doing this Jerry Reed Telecaster, you know?
You guys had quite a list of people come through your doors that were like sponsored artists, like Michelangelo Badio and
oh yeah, we built a guitar for him.
That's awesome.
This is our second catalog.
Yeah,
we call Badio series there.
Yeah,
and then the next year we did another series for him too. And we did a bunch of guitars for Michael. He was great.
Any other signature artists that really stand out in your memory?
Not guitars that we built it for, you know. Early on, Bonnie Raitt's guitar player. Actually, Willie had a friend who had a studio called Palmyra Studio in Texas, and Bonnie used to come through there every once in a while and record. So we ended up slipping a Jerry Reed down there, and George picked it up and loved it. And to this day, he uses it with Bonnie.
So it seems like of all the different models that Tradition produced, the Jerry Reed line was like the one that everybody seems to know about.
Right.
Was that a personal favorite of yours?
Here's a beautiful one that was owned by Kerry Marks, the director of music at the Grand Ole Opry.
Oh my goodness, look at that.
At one time, all of the staff musicians, the bass player and 3 guitar players, used Tradition guitars.
Oh, hold on. Let me make sure I got that right. So like full sweep, all the staff musicians that were playing at the Grand Ole Opry were playing Tradition instruments.
Spider Wilson.
Yeah.
Spider Wilson, Jimmy Capps.
Okay.
Marks, and Billy Linneman was the bass player.
Wow.
And they were all using Traditions. Jerry Reed took his guitar in there one day to those boys, sat backstage in the little room, showed it to them. We gave them a few guitars to take home and play. Right. And they came and said, we've made an executive decision. We're going to play nothing but Tradition guitars. And for quite a while, it was like that. I was even told at one time we were the 3rd most recognized brand walking on and off the stage.
That's crazy high praise. What's your personal favorite model?
Really, I don't have it right here. I got one inside. What did we call it? You know, it's a single cutaway semi-hollow body, thin line. Let me show you. Let's see. This guy right here.
Oh, wow. And you said that's a thin line? Which one is that?
It's a thin line. It's a 2-inch body thickness. These are 3.5-inch depth bodies with a Venetian cutaway. And then we did a Florentine cutaway set too. This is a 3.5-inch depth body. Okay, the 750, and the 700's a thin line. Designed this guitar with a guy named Jim Triggs, who is pretty famous guitar builder actually. And we made this because I wanted to keep it hollow as possible. And instead of having a block down the center like a 335, it's got just a block right here underneath the bridge and the tailpiece.
Interesting.
So it's actually hollow down here and solid right there.
Man, how many of those did you make?
Oh, we made them for several years. A guy named Probin Gregory that plays for Brian Wilson. Okay. You've ever seen Brian Wilson on The Tonight Show or anything like that? And there's a guy in a red guitar. That's a red MTA 700 that Probin plays.
I suppose there's probably a reason why you don't ever see those, like the 700s coming up for sale, is because anybody who's got one is probably not coming up off it.
Right.
I'll share something with you that's kind of funny. when the PRS SE Silver Sky came out, you know, everybody was raving about that neck. Oh, it's such a great neck. Oh, it's absolutely incredible. Dude, I took my contour gauge and I profiled the neck off of a 2012 like G12.
Yeah.
Identical.
Ah.
Identical. Like right down to like the 10th of a millimeter. Like exactly the same.
What year G12?
I want to say 2012.
Okay. See, at that time, World Musical was building our guitars in Korea, and White Musical, their counterpart in Indonesia, was building our G12s and all that, S20s and all that.
Yeah.
Well, they're the ones Paul Reed Smith first went to in Korea to build.
You're kidding me. You're kidding me.
Oh no, man! I walked in, see all those guitars, I gave them basic ideas on what I wanted the profile to look like, but
dude, it's the same neck. It's the same neck. And dude, and there are people that like were all over social media that were talking about, if I could do anything, I would get like a USA core body like Silver Sky, and I would put this SE neck on it because it feels so much better and yada yada yada. And the whole time I'm laughing because I'm like, it's a tradition neck. I've showed it to a couple people too, and they've been surprised by that.
World built great. We're the guys I showed you first. They were fabulous. They went out of business in 2006.
Oh no.
They knew their stuff. They built great guitars. And we just lucked into World. We kind of skipped around for a year or two with some different manufacturers after 2006. And then World came to us in a NAMM show, a guy named Maiwan, and wanted to build guitars for us. And that's when I kind of redesigned the line, made the standard and classic and pro series. And some of those guitars were, in my opinion, the best that we've ever had.
That was 2009-ish, that time frame.
Here's this was the prototype for their version of the S2000. Man, it's fabulous. It's got a long tenon set neck. I don't know if you can see them, but bumblebees in there.
Yeah.
And we started using bumblebees. Tone Pro wanted to work with us, so this is a Tone Pro locking bridge and Tune-O-Matic, and then of course Grover Rotomatic locking tuners.
So you're telling me that somebody sees an S2003 and it's out there on the market, and presuming it hasn't been messed with, that guitar is going to have bumblebee caps in it. It's going to
no, wait. After 2009.
After 2009, right?
Yeah, but it's an S2000. Yes, it's going to have bumblebees. It's going to have some of the finest rosewood you've ever seen. In fact, I sent one of these to a guitar player for a whatever they do, profile the guitar and everything. The guy said he wasn't a fan of what did he call it? He didn't like he thought it was fake rosewood. It looked so good. He thought it was fake.
Yeah.
And oh man, I mean, these guys were absolutely fabulous. Yeah, so 09, 10, 11, all those production years are, like I say, it's a long tenon set, bumblebees. It's got our PAF pickups, boop, 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 those little pickups up. And these are braided wire 2-post in this version. But they're, of course, coil tap and whatever you want.
So what was the big difference between like the 2000 and the S200?
Doesn't have a bumblebee, but it's still wired like a 58.
Right.
It's the same build. In fact, built at the very same factory. So
the red LP that's right there, that's my 09 S200, right?
Oh yeah.
And then I've got off to the side, that's I want to say 2005 S20.
Okay.
So this one's Indonesia. This one is Korea.
Oh, it says World Musical Instruments on the back of it, I'm sure. Or writing on the back.
Oh yeah, W09. Yep, exactly that.
Came with the case.
I don't have the case. I never got the case when I purchased mine. That looks like an old Lofton.
Yeah, man. So what I did.
Oh, dude. Look at that. Look at that.
So when we got in with World, we also got in with what I consider still the best case maker I've ever found. And we started producing those cases. Well, if you notice, it's got that real thin waistline.
Yeah.
It's the Cali Girl cases that they made for a year and a half for Gibson.
Yep.
Well, they stopped making them. And I actually trademarked the name Cali Girl. These are Cali Girl cases.
Nice.
I got one of those that I should have brought it out here. It fell out of a guy's trailer at 60 miles an hour. Never came open. When he finally got it, he stopped at a gas station and the guy said, "Hey, fella, your tailgate's open." And he looked down and he saw something sitting in the road. And he went back. It was his S2000. Fine. He went on to the gig that night and played.
Oh my God, man. Maybe you can answer this question for me. And this one's as much as for me as for anybody else. Traditions, like everyone that I've ever had, the first thought when I've picked it up is this is heavy. Like heavier than I would expect it to be. Right. And I'm that's not a problem for me. I love that. Like the 2009 is probably 2 pounds lighter than the Indonesia built S20.
Yeah. Oh, I bet.
That S20 is like 11.5 pounds, man.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes. Or really, really heavy.
so like, is that how was that an intentional thing or was that just like?
No. we never really gave him a kind of a body weight spec. Just designs, Gibson sued us over our original design of the S series.
You mean the Solster that's sitting right there?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, and see that's a later one. The little curve in the bottom of the pick guard where it doesn't go straight across. See, that's a new pick guard.
Yeah, this was I had to buy this from you.
Oh, okay. See, because our original one just went like a Gibson. The Gibson lawyer designed that. Said, "Why don't you just put a little curve down here?" I said, "Okay, Lucian, that sounds good."
Okay.
He made the ring off. He made us change the pick guard. He made us. We couldn't use block or anvil inlays. And the other thing Gibson made us change was, of course, the headstock, and I designed that headstock.
The inversion of the knobs that you've got.
That too. That was the fifth thing.
And like, how did you guys settle on the bikini bottom inlays?
Jim actually asked for something. He wanted some kind of T, and I did all the catalogs and everything, Photoshop and all this. So I just designed it, and it didn't have a Texas meaning to me. I just, this is something Jim made a long time ago.
Okay.
And so I kind of drew on this, stretched it out, made it fit inside a fret, and came up with the T inlay.
So at the time that you were like designing it, did it occur to you that it looked like a bikini bottom?
No.
Is that okay that I called it that? Because I don't want to like insult your artwork.
No, that's fine.
Because I mean that's a super distinctive, awesome thing about like those guitars. I've always loved that.
Well, like I say, that was initially some of Jim's input, and he was great. He knew his stuff. He designed the first pickups we had. Like I say, he'd worked for Seymour Duncan.
Okay.
And
so that actually, so like on the Solster, I noticed that the pickups have a very, very different characteristic or a different character than anything else that I ever had on all of them. Are those his?
No, but we made the guy. Those were Chinese pickups. That's a Chinese guitar,
right,
from our factory. We, like I say, D had knew this guy. Jim went over to their factory. We were having problems with the first pickups that they had because they were microphonic, and touring the factory, Jim went through a room where they had potting facility set up for potting pickups, but it was all cold, not being used. He goes, "Oh no, look, this is what we got to have." And so they started potting the pickups, and that's really the only spec we gave them at that time. When we started working with Rira, they introduced us to the pickup manufacturer that still makes the pickups that I get today.
And who's that? Yeah, I think they still make pickups for the Korean built Epiphones.
Oh man, they make pickups for like everybody. Okay,
Yeah.
He's the king over there. We had a great relationship, and Jim designed the first pickups and they were kind of the ones that we call Millennium pickups. They were designed after a Seymour Duncan SH4 Jeff Beck model, real hot.
I've heard of the Millenniums. I've heard of the silver and gold medallions.
Yeah, and those are all the same, all really the same. There were the same specs on each pickup, just different colors.
Those are Jim designed American pickups.
Yes, and even the Indonesian ones, G&B sent components to Indonesia, or just sent pickups. They were built by G&B. When we switched to World, we used G&B.
Okay.
Even these guitars, real hard to find somebody who makes semi-hollows in Korea, oddly enough. And Silver Star Unsung, another friend of ours, ended up making these for me, but G&B still did the pick because that's what we wanted.
So where did the assembly of all this stuff go? Like where did that happen? Was that
Korea and Indonesia? And
I heard stories about like the setups, like initial setups and stuff like that would be done in-house by like Chris or Willie or whoever.
Well, at first in Indiana, we had a couple of different guys. Brian Allbrand, you might see his name on the our website. He was our setup guy for a long time. When I moved it to Texas, we got old Willie, and that's where we got. These are the guitars that we used to AB when we made our new pickups.
Okay.
His 58 Gold Top and a 59 ES 345.
Oh man. So I lose the timeline because like there's like the early 2000s to like late 2000s guitars. There's a lot of them out of Indonesia, and then like around 2009 it starts to become a mixed bag. Like somewhere.
Well, actually, at the start, from like 98 is when we imported our first guitars from Yuchern in China. That lasted until about 2001. We wanted semi-hollow guitars, and they didn't make anything but solid body. And so we found someone that made semi-hollows, and that was Rira in Korea.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then they had so the Rira had factories in both countries.
Rira had a factory in Korea, and then they had a company called PT Rira in Indonesia.
Rira, it sounds like more of a conglomerate, right? So you've got some that are being produced in country A and some that are being produced in country B.
Well,
now that I think about it, it makes sense that you're saying this. Like every guitar that I've seen come out of Indonesia was a solid body, right?
Yeah. That's the way it was then. That's all we made down. A Strat, a Les Paul, a Tele, a bass. Our basic line, and the reason was really labor costs was so much cheaper. All the pickups and for a long time the necks even were made in Korea and sent to Indonesia and assembled on cars. Yeah, then they started doing the necks and everything too. But Willie Smith, been a friend of mine for a long time. He's an old blues player. I showed you those guitars and everything. Anyway, he was a huge influence on the spec changes from 09 and on. The use of the bumblebees,
right?
He helped me develop the PAF pickups. He had the ear for it.
I got to tell you, man, like the S200 came stock with them. And then the S20, that originally had the silver medallions in it. I put those PAFs in it. Those PAFs are among the best pickups I've ever. If you're like, this is for anybody watching the video, if you're a low output humbucker kind of person, like if you're somebody that like I want to plug in and I want the amp to do the work, I have not found a pickup yet that compares to those PAFs. They're stupidly good. Did you guys ever have issues with Fender?
No, not directly. They, they told us at one show they came by and we had at that time we were selling direct copies of Strats and stuff, and they got pissed off at us, but just said something to us. But no, not until Fender went to court, maybe 07 or 08 or something like that. They went to, they tried to trademark the Strat body.
Right.
I don't know if you're.
Yeah.
We fought them in court then, but that's the only time we had any problems with Fender.
What ended up happening? Like why? Like we kind of touched on it already, but like why did Tradition go down?
Well, when Eric and Chris and everybody was still involved, and we were still in Indiana, sales started really dropping off. Like I say, after Jim died, he was a big driving force and a great salesman, and
Okay.
he was the whole idea behind this, the concept of building a guitar that musicians can afford and that doesn't cost the dealer a ton of money, and he can make good money on it. Well, what happened was, for instance, we'd sell a dealer a guitar for $120. Well, he'd sell it for $125 instead of $190 or $200, whatever the price really should have been. And so we kind of got known as the cheap guitar company, and it was hard to outrun that. Plus, like I say, there was a lot of debt at that time. I wasn't involved really in the company at that time, and I don't know where all the money went, but there was a lot of debt to overcome, and people just got kind of soured on it, and we couldn't get the sales, couldn't get people to buy into the brand.
So I've heard stories from like people, like I'm in Maryland, right? So I travel all over the place, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. Like Tradition is a known commodity especially for any of these like mom and pop stores.
Well, that was our deal. Independent dealers. We didn't, right or wrong, that was one thing Jim didn't want to do, was sell to big box stores. He wouldn't sell to GC, wouldn't even entertain it.
So that's funny because like the story that I've heard was like, did you guys have a deal with Sam Ash at all? Like none of the big distributors or anything?
None. No.
That's fascinating because one of the stories that I heard was that like dealers would be like effectively told by whoever they had other relationships with to like take their Traditions and put them on the shelf with the Squires as opposed to like the made in Mexico tellies.
Yeah.
And that association would be the thing that would drive the sale down.
Not that I know of.
Okay.
We were never in any big box stores.
Yeah, like again, talking, a lot of people don't know, like talking to guitar, people that are dealers, like the relationships that get imposed upon them just to be able to say they're a Gibson dealer, they're a Fender dealer, they're a Gretsch dealer. You have to sell X number of guitars before you get that next shipment or before they'll even like be willing to talk to you again. They get incentivized to drive their prices down, because of the predatory pricing of the big box stores. Right. But also B, in order to get new inventory, they have to make the sale to get the thing out yeah.
Jim and Wendell and Ed were all three reps for and real well known in the business, and they saw the plight of their customers, their friends who had supported them through buying their stuff over the years. Now they were getting beat out by big box stores who, when you're a rep for a company, you don't have any say over whether they sell to Guitar Center or not.
Yeah.
And so all their friends getting run out of business, and they wanted to start a line of guitars that could fix that.
I wonder how hard it would be to do that again now, like with the internet. And if you don't have to go through a distributor, if you don't have to go through Guitar Center, like, does that make it more or less likely, do you think, for people to be able to start a line?
We were the distributor,
Yeah.
basically, because it was direct to customers. There was no distributor. We distributed our own, and that'd be the way you could do it again. Somebody real savvy with all that, could probably make a kill.
Yeah. Are there any plans for like Tradition to make a resurgence?
Not with me.
No.
No. I mean, I wish I could, but I spent all my money.
I got you, man.
Everybody lost interest in it, and it was just me. And let me tell you, it's hard to do this. People who try to do this are astonished at what you have to do to play on that kind of level. It takes a lot of cash, and it takes a lot of resources. And when it's down to just me, that was it, man.
There's only so much risk one person can take, right?
Because I really thought that when I redesigned everything in 2009 and came out with the classic series, man, I thought we were gonna, because the guitars were fabulous and they were so well worth the money.
Yeah.
But it didn't take off. I don't know. I made a big push, did lots of advertising, all kinds of stuff. Went to the shows, did all the stuff.
Man, that's unfortunate, because like the product that you guys brought to market was exceptional, and it continues to be exceptional. And like in the intro to this video, one of the things I'm going to talk about is like my first Tradition that I ever bought was $60 in a pawn shop, because the person at the pawn shop didn't even know what it was. I didn't realize it was one of the best Strats I was ever going to have in my hands. And like I went through, I mean, like I'm sitting here looking at, like, I guess you call it a vintage now, but like an 89 Strat Plus from Fender, the gold lace pickups, all that other good stuff, right? If I have the choice of which one I'm going to pick up, I'm frequently gravitating towards my G12, right? Like just because of the way that it feels, like everything about it is what I wanted a Strat to be, from the fretboard radius. Like there's something slinky about it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Even though you've got that long scale length, right? Like it's still got looseness. Like it still lets you massage things.
Yeah.
That a Strat just, and again, same setup down to the millimeter, same string gauges, same everything. The feel is just better on the Tradition. And like, it never made sense to me that like the company couldn't like survive. But then I realized, if somebody knows about the company and they've already got 2 or 3 of those G12s, or a G10, or like the 1200 or something like that, they're probably not looking to pick up another one. So what do you want Tradition to be remembered for?
Building a guitar that people could afford and were proud to play on stage.
Well, dude, you did it. I hope you realize that. I hope you realize that you did exactly that.
Proud of it. I'm real proud of it.
So what do you do now? What's the venture these days?
Oh, well, like I say, I still dabble with Trim King a little bit, and mostly I'm a grandpa to those grandkids.
Oh man, congratulations. That's good living.
Here's something Lloyd Main sent me. There's Lloyd.
Oh wow.
And he said, "You're living the life. Go fishing with the grandkids and hug one another every chance you get." Can you see that picture?
Yes, sir.
That's a guy named Whitey Johnson sitting down with a telly I made for him. It says Whitey on the neck, and then that's Robert Plant singing there with him.
No shit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you go, brother.
Anytime. We'll do it again.
So there you go. That's the story with Tradition Guitars. Hopefully you found this useful. And if you're looking at that Tradition and you're thinking about buying it, I hope you do. These guitars are worth something. Not just because of how well they play, but because of what they represent. Handful of people out there working in the industry trying to protect something that they believed was valuable. And it was. Still is, where you can find it anyway. Go out there, get your hands on one, even if it's an old beater that you pick up for $60 in a pawn shop. Spend the time, fix it up, and I hope you fall in love. Before I forget, Rusty was not the only person that I spoke to when I was developing this video. I also spoke to Chris Donahue, who's a fantastic dude. Never got the chance to record the conversation with him, though. That's more my fault than anybody else's. But if you're interested in capturing multiple perspectives, you know, maybe we could arrange to get in touch with Brian or Willie, maybe put everybody together in a room, have a couple beers, and talk about the glorious attempt. Anyway, like I said, I hope you found this useful. We'll see you on the next one.